In these painful times, in which violence is still ongoing, we are honored to be here on stage. But before diving deep, I would like to recognize and honor all of those who seek change. First of all, those who say no, the forces of resistance, the boundary putters. In this current moment, your cry has power, and the energy you put to oppose systems of domination is admirable. Your anger is a sane reaction to the current state of injustice and violence. May your rage be a force for reconstructing fair structures. Second, I would like to honor those who seek to create the small examples of the potential future, the forces of reconciliation and peace building. You inspire the imagination of what can be and provide hope and vision. You liberate from the physical and mental separation walls. You point to the about to come in the here and now. You are the future we wish to see. May your bubbles grow. Third, I would like to honor those who seek to heal from the stories, histories, narratives, collective traumas, intergenerational traumas, psychological suffering, and a general state of stuckness and swampiness. The system of oppression and separation runs so deep, and liberating the mind can be of support for liberating from structures. You try to free those who internalize the subjugation and expand those with narrow consciousness. May your revelatory powers make opaque visions clear. At times, those strategies are considered oppositional to each other. Some might say, peace starts from within, and critique those who choose resistance of the without. Some might say, liberation before reconciliation and peace, and critique those who fight the forces of separation and try to create healthy relations right now. Some might say, there's no consciousness to change, but material realities to oppose, and critique the healers in their naivety. We wish to find ways to merge those strategies with a shared goal of liberation, justice, and peace. Liberation from structures of domination, liberation from separation, and liberation of our consciousness. The story we're telling is a story of peace building and healing and liberation. May it incite your imagination, and may that imagination manifest itself in movement. For some of you, the story began before you knew anything about what we're about to tell you. It emerged already in your consciousness in a moment of epiphany or just a passing thought. The idea was there. The idea was always there. Some might say that the idea is perennial. Here is a humble manifestation of an idea with all of its earthly complications and nuance. This is not the solution, but simply a communication device. We begin our story with a road trip in the Holy Land, studying the Ayahuasca underground scene and its astral projections. We continue sharing our intentional peace-building groups that we created in Spain 2 years ago. Then Sami Awad will come on video and share what happened in the last 2 years since then, and especially since October. And then we speak about our future plans. So let's start with a road trip. Antoine Saka, a community activist with much experience in dialogue groups. Natalie Ginsberg, the Global Impact Officer in MAPS, who was crucial for initiating this study. And me, an Israeli psychedelic neuroscientist from Imperial College London. We hit the road, traverse the Holy Land, and interview Israelis and Palestinians who drink ayahuasca together. The underground scene is well developed in Israel. Psychedelia is no stranger to the Israeli mind. These liberatory medicines have healed for a few decades those who, after the army, sought to travel to faraway places on the globe and in the mind. Psytrance music is mainstream. India and South America are part of the rites of passage of the Israeli citizen. The drugs and music have been important until a local scene has been rooted with its own local variations. Ayahuasca is manifested through the lens of Jewish mysticism and Amazonian shamanism, and many Hebrew songs become part of the repertoire of medicine music. Some Palestinians who sought access 6 years ago when we started this project, some Palestinians who sought access to those medicines found themselves surrounded by Israeli hippies, like me, with their loving attitude and their blind spots. Here, we enter with our first project, simply interviewing those who already share the ritual together, not for the purpose of peace building, but just they happen to be in the same space together. The road trip is meaningful, and we have very deep conversations with many people. Many tears are flowing when hope reveals itself in dialogue. Alliances and collaborations already created through those interviews, and inspirations twinkle just by chatting. And I'll let Antoine take it from here.
Good afternoon. If my voice is not loud enough, please let me know. So this trip that Leo started sharing was a trip that we did 6 years ago almost. And it was the start of a journey for me that wasn't just the start. It was a start of a journey that continues till today. It unveiled a lot of things that were not expected for me in this journey, but a lot of things that I'm thankful to. As we started this journey, I was given the space to encounter brothers and sisters, Palestinians of mine from all across the land, into witnessing what they have shared with me about the testimonies of being with the medicine. And a lot of moments of joy, sadness, celebration, sorrow, you name it. I got to witness a lot. I got to connect to a lot, to even parts of myself that I was aware cognitively on, but not connected to. That again was the start of a journey. At some point, we did end up collecting the interviews, and we did then a day of retreat. The three of us, joined by two locals, we held the space with medicine, where we wanted to reflect after those interviews. And we had the intention to heal, to explore, to sit with sense into how real is this that we're trying to approach, how real is this work, and even how to dance with each other at some point. And to be honest, at that point, as someone who comes from a background of community activism, medicine was a personal experience of healing for me that I was becoming a disciple of. And there was a deep yearning question in me that I held at that circle of medicine, where I asked if I can see how real it is. And oh boy, that wasn't something easy. That was the scariest psychedelic vision I've had ever in my life so far. I was brought into a volcano and started to being descended slowly, feeling the heat into my body. That was a vision that did not stop there. It was the start. It was the start of allowing me to connect, sense more and more into what does it mean actually to enter a dance where we're not dancing with only personal traumas, we're also dancing around with inherited, with collective. And as soon as I opened my eyes from that trip, I remember looking at the land and realizing for the first time that even every centimeter I'm surrounded with carries pain in it. And again, that was the start. It was very real, but it was also filled with learning, growth, joy and sadness, hard moments and realizations. I'm gonna share with you some of the themes that I remember from that time came up, and were also things that continue to be carried with me since that start of journey till today. Apolitical is healing. It's healing me, and I care less about the identity of politics. The mystical unifies and the political divides. Statements that were of complete challenge for me, and at some point, challenge for us as a team. How can we sit, and how can we be with, and how can we process when we encounter people who have experienced this oneness, unity with the other through medicine and harmony, yet when we look at the big picture outside of those spaces, we fail to understand how to translate it outside to that word. Slowly and slowly, the possibility of bringing that healing to the collective became more and more alive. The more and more I heard people with even those challenges, the more and more my belief was strengthened that it is possible to bring it to the collective. And slowly, slowly, we started realizing also that there is something missing. An intentional collective container that actually focuses on the collective and in the inherited to create those spaces for healing is something that has been missing. Personal growth and personal healing is amazing, and we cannot sideline or blind ourselves from what's happening in our own backyards. And that was the quest that we entered with. More that came up was to what liberation it means, actually. I experienced my own liberation from my personal trauma, yet I'm so much aware that that liberation is connected to my mental being and also is not disconnected from my physical being. And that applies not only to me, applies to my people and applies to anyone who lives under oppression. We can liberate our minds from the patterns and the traumas and the patterns that the traumas have created, yet there is a bigger trauma around that we need to liberate ourselves from. Starting to understand that liberation experience that I had is not only something that is physical, and that it is something that needs to transcend, to be experienced beyond and under systematic injustices. Having the will and the choice to act from that liberation, I stand here. I'm a privileged Palestinian who had always the choice to leave the land, but I never left the land. I was a prisoner of my own trauma till a certain point in my life. And at some point, I realized that I'm also a prisoner of my oppressor's trauma. And that also became something that I needed to challenge in myself and allow a space for it to be challenged on the collective. The impact of the inherited trauma is simply not easy. It's freezing at my best, and how I experienced it and how I've witnessed it. The liberation from that prison is one more step closer to my own liberation and to our collective liberation. I'm here today because the organizers of this event allowed me and gave me the invitation to come and be among you, and I'm thankful for that. And 7 years down the road of our experience so far, the journey did not finish. The journey is deepening my faith and belief that personal healing can transcend into interpersonal and collective, therefore. And it has also deepened my faith that it is essential to bring this work of healing from the collective intentionally to from the personal to the collective intentionally, because there can be no bypass for that. None of us can really be healthy if our surrounding, our environment, our neighbors are not healthy. I come to beg to differ with those and dialogue who say that medicine cannot respond to societal pathologies and systematic oppression and all forms of political oppression. The potential and the right, actually, to end cycles of trauma, whether it's from the river to the sea or every corner around the world, even in your own backyards here in the US, should not be exclusive to any community and should be open and welcoming to everyone. I hope that you all go out back to your world and life, continuing doing the brave work that you do. The courage that you do hold to the work that you bring is something that can help us, not only in that land, but I again stress globally, to address systematic sicknesses that need to be addressed, struggles that need to be addressed. And here I would like to invite Lior to continue to share before we are joined by Sami. Thank you. Tried my best.
So we returned from this road trip. I got lots of interviews, qualitative data, transcriptions, doing analysis on the data. It's a research project as well. And the three themes that emerged from phenomenologically, the experiences of people, were oneness, recognition, and collective traumas. And the oneness is the obvious experience, the collective joy, the communitas, the togetherness, solidarity, the collapse of identities and social structures and hierarchies, and a sense of equality between people. It's an experience to celebrate, and it's an inspiration for many collective events. But as Antoine said, it can also be a bypass for political tensions and realities. Right? So the irony of harmony is if we create this sense of equality in a small group, it might prevent us from acting on the larger reality around us. The oneness can be in service of the status quo if it becomes too strong, because the Palestinian conflict, the duality of the conflict, cannot enter a state that sometimes holds too strong ideas of unity. And we continue to inquire into this, and we saw other themes that emerged, and we worked with all those themes in the future projects. The other one was recognition. So if you imagine that we live in a reality that our frameworks are built by intractable conflict, and in this intractable conflict, our frameworks rigidify more and more. The ethos of conflict is very rigid. We see and perceive the world and the other based on these frameworks. And we know that with psychedelics, or we suspect that with psychedelics, they can expand our reducing valves, or reduce our filters, or reduce our beliefs and expectations of the world, or open a window of plasticity for social relearning. And in these moments, in ceremonies, people can connect to the other beyond the frameworks, including the other culture. So there's stories of connection, Israelis connecting to Arabic music, and instead of resisting it, and it might be resistance in the beginning, it can open them up very, very strongly, and sense of awe and new connection is emerging from that experience. It's an experience full of hope, full of peace is felt in the air in this moment, and people describe it as the expanded container of the group. Something that was excluded is now including. A new connection is now included when the frameworks are weakened. The third theme was collective trauma, again, as Antoine mentioned, and cycles of trauma, visions of collective trauma. It can be blood absorbed in the land, the mothers who sacrifice the children from the endless cycles of conflict, seeing the other side, experiencing the trauma of the other side, Holocaust, Nakba, future ruptures, all of these come in visions. And they're painful, they're full of rage, they're full of anger and fear and agony and pain and triggers and triggers and triggers and triggers all over. But with these visions and with these collective trauma, there's another layer that is not just healing of those collective trauma of the past, it can also motivate people to change the future. And what we saw in many of those experiences is that it can activate a certain revolutionary, prophetic force in people. If you imagine these revelatory moments as revolutionary in potentia, the insight wants to manifest in action. The eureka moment is full of enthusiast energy to try to change reality. So I got hooked on this idea of the prophetic, revolutionary, revelatory moments. So now next to the revelatory fire, we continue to look at this. This is where politics and psychedelics interact. The personal is political. And now next to the glorified mystical unification, and next to the shamanic boundary dissolving liminal symbolic play or the psychedelic trickstery, we can see the rebellious prophetic energy. We can observe it anywhere. Let's identify as a micro-messianic moment, and there are micro-messiahs all over psychedelia. I'm sure there are many of this here in the audience. So you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, good. So with these insights created, we moved on to build an intentional peace program. We brought new members, Sami Awad, who will join soon, peace activist for a few decades, Armel Ayman, an Israeli therapist, Indios, Amazonian shaman, trickster from Brazil, and another Palestinian woman who prefers not to identify by name. And we brought them, we did a ceremony together to include them now in the process and created the future project. And now we bring all these ideas and we want to bring in an intentional practice. We want to bring the intention of healing collective traumas, of building community, of inspiring visions, and creating upon those visions. The people that came for these programs, we had 3 of those 2 years ago. Each group was 12 people, half-half split. And the people that came to this program, you're right, they're not from the extreme sides of the political spectrum. That's the first question we always ask. They're the people that want to change, they have the intention to change, but they might have lost hope, they might be in despair, disempowered, oppressed. These are the disillusioned activists that tried everything already, or the medicine people that now seek solutions in those psychedelic medicines. And of course, musicians to hold the space together from both sides. And in the preparation to these programs in Spain, we brought people first to the West Bank. We had few meetings there, building trust, going to see the separation wall, going to refugee camps, embodying the conflict as well, not just in the news, but just feeling it, being next to the wall, feeling the strength of it, the strength of separation, but also building conversations, building of trust, playing music together, enjoying the time together before they travel to Spain. And then they travel to Spain, and here I would like to give an example of one group, in the process of one group. I will focus on this and tell their story, and what I want you to see is just a participatory relation angle that we took. The experience is not just something personal, it moved between people, it was something we did together, and the process of the group was very much together. So we were in this Spain in a place called Cielo de Ravera in Extremadura, and very far away, beautiful forest with a beautiful maloca, a place owned by Hermanusis and was previously owned by Santo Daime. And now we're there, we're already entering conversations, we have a lot of conversation, a lot of sharing. We use a practice for to share personal stories. Some of them are personal, some of them are political, but not the political of stating opinions, but more the political that's in everybody's bodies and everybody's histories and everybody's stories and inspirations and hope and traumas. And they share the stories for 2 days, the participants, and the political reality starts to weave by sharing those stories. And this is pretty much the mindset through which they enter the experience. First, go to the river for 1 day, rest after the sharing of stories, and in the evening, first ceremony happens. A ceremony that dedicates to the past. And this first group become very much excited. They're pioneers traveling to the psychopolitical mind, places maybe very few have been before. They feel that there's something novel here. They're excited about it. They're also holding the space for the facilitators themselves, because the facilitator are also in an experimental mode, trying new things, inquiring new potentialities. So the first group is excited. A first ceremony begins. There's one candle in the middle. It's in darkness. Indios who traveled from the Ashaninka tribe spent a few months there. He brings the Ashaninka music to the ceremony, and in darkness he plays Ashaninka Ikaroses for around an hour. But in that moment, a lot of tension builds, collective pains are experienced. There's purging in the space that relates to this. There's a lot of pretty much tension, like a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies, a lot of tension there in the beginning. Livy then steps into the altar. She goes next to the altar. She prays for peace. She prays with a song for the end of the cycles of oppressor-oppressed. She sings a song at that moment that uplifts the energy of it. Erez, who sits on the side, feels uncomfortable in his body. He goes outside of the maloca to breathe some fresh air. He sees a lot of visions of the ayahuasca, very colorful, very playful, but he actually tells the ayahuasca, I came here all the way to Spain to deal with my pain, and I want to deal with my pain. And he gets it, and there are visions of snake coming, and then he's there out in the forest, and the insects are coming out of the ground, and it's kind of yucky and disgusting, kind of energy of evilness and scariness and fear, and he's there, and it's out of the ground, and he feels suddenly that he's in Eastern Europe, in the pogroms of the past, and he's full of fear, of evil, of stinking air. He's there, hungry, getting close to the ground, going to a tree, and in the tree you see a mass grave of his ancestors buried there. He tells them, I want to take you out of the ground. Let me help you get out of the ground. And they tell him, no, leave us here. Don't dig the pain of the past. There's nothing to dig in the past. We just want to rest here in our grave. He goes back to the Maloka. He sits in his place, first takes a second cup, sits in his place, and suddenly there's a strong vision that hits him. He sees people hitting him all over the body. It resonates with the story that he heard of Hassan, who told us how the soldiers, Israeli soldiers, beat him in the checkpoint. It resonates with that, but it doesn't sure who's beating him. Is it the Israeli soldiers? Are they Palestinians? He looked in their eyes and they look like his ancestors, but it's all very confusing for him. The pain is too big, and he just want to say, the pain is too big, I want to leave it, I don't want to touch it. The evening begins, the night begins, the energy relaxes, and there's constantly cycles of synchrony of emotions between the group members. Yael plays the drum and relaxes the mood, and the evening ends quite well in an optimistic energy, but not full of inspiration and hope yet. Now, the day ends, the morning begins, we do integration circle for a few hours, and then Omar facilitates an integration painting session. Erez paints his experience of the mass grave. He adds a heart shape of his ancestors coming out of the ground, uses some humor to kind of bring some hope to the situation. He goes to the tree where his mass grave of his ancestors, and he put a LED light beam on that tree, a spiritual ladder of sort for his ancestors. The second ceremony is about to begin. It's dedicated for the future, for visioning, for inspiring, for building, for celebrating. And the group comes a bit anxious in the beginning, but everybody dressed in white after a shower, come clean, and everybody share their intention that they want to hold the space together as a group right now. They want to be there for each other, care for each other. They want to lift it together. And pretty much this is what happens in the first cup. I sit next to Antoine in the first cup, and I have this solidarity of a friend with me, and we feel the group like very much together, sitting, inspiring each other. Erez sees everybody smiling. There's joy. It's a relaxed joy, some serenity in the air, as if we're lifting a spaceship of sorts. With this energy, Erez then go outside to the forest, to now enjoy the air. He's going to check with his ancestors. You see Antoine there in the forest also enjoying the night sky and the fresh air, and he invites Antoine with him to the grave of his ancestors. They go to the grave, and Antoine is protecting Erez from above, like kind of holding the space for him, while Erez goes to the ground, and he sees his ancestors being released from the ground. He puts his hands on the ground and stays there to release the pain of the past. He lifts his hand, and the heart is there on the ground, the heart shape, the heart he manifested in his painting, the heart that might still be there somewhere in Eastern Europe. He returns to the Maloka, he goes sit down, and a second cup is served. All of the candles are now lit. There's light in the room, it's not in darkness. And there's some anxiety in the group, and a celebration is invited to the space. Indios takes his guitar, he beams out togetherness to everybody in the group, and there's a cathartic chanting moment, and everybody come up and dance and celebrate. Nadia wakes up from her despair, she runs and bags on the floor. Ruqayya dances ecstatically in the space. The space is full of collective catharsis. There's a moment of real celebration, real release, shouting out, woof! Releasing it all, and then the energy stays there for a few songs like this. Really beautiful new connection of the group. It really feels that a bond was created there that is very strong, pivotal moment in the night. After a few songs, Hassan wakes up from his vision, and he sees in his vision children beating each other. They're beating each other, they're constantly beating each other. He sees the cycle of them beating each other, and he shouts, "Khalas!" Khalas! And everybody are scared in the moment. They're shocked. The Israeli are extremely scared. The Israeli are always scared that the Palestinian mind, once it's liberated, and Palestinian body, once it's liberated, it will seek revenge. So it speaks to a very deep fear of the Israeli, a fear that is manifested in policies and violence, and that fear is triggered for Israelis in the moment. And everybody sit with that, they sit with that energy, and he continues, Hassan continues, and everybody decide to relax into it and hold his process. The group holds his process, Yael takes the drum again, she beats the drum, we hold the space for him, and we sit with that anger, with the rage, with the rupture, and the feeling of almost violence. We sit with that when we hold it together. The process goes down, relaxes, the ceremony ends, Indios close the ceremony, and everybody go out to the fire to relax, sing some kumbaya songs around the fire, while Hassan is still in the Maloka together with Antoine, together with Sami and Erez that continue to hold his process. And I'm in the fire, I'm going to check with them, I'm going to check what's happening, and I see them eating an imaginary pizza and smoking an imaginary joint. They ordered it from an imaginary delivery guy, so I come, I take a slice and a toke, and evening ends. The evening ends, and we do integration the day after, but a sense of family. I mean, there was a lot in this night, a lot in this night. And a lot of emotions and ups and downs, and a sense of family, real family, a kinship is created for that moment. In the integration circle, we do theatrical integration. We allow to reenact some of the experiences. We invite others to reenact with us the experiences. And in that energy, a lot of this prophetic, strong, revelatory, revolutionary spirit is spoken by different participants. So near one of the medicine, kind of hippie, universal Israelis speaks now the pain of the Palestinian people, the anger of the Palestinian people has integrated me, and I'm going to carry it wherever I go in my medicine work. And we see here more of those expressions, more of these feeling of empowered, of wanting to change, and the group is really with that strong both connection, hope, inspiration, vision, and really this feeling of ability to change. The last day of those 10 days, we end with a commitment circle. In the commitment circle, we share our commitments, what we want to do with ourselves when we return to the land, what we want to continue to do with the group, with our tribe that we belong to, and we just share those commitments. And with that, everybody are now with full of inspiration, travel together. We had the facilitators hug the group, they go on a bus, and they go to their journey back home. The facilitators wait there for a few days, integrate, chat, go eat some calamari, and just enjoy the time next to the river while we're waiting for the second group. The second and third group, I would not go deep into their process. I will just share that the second group was more of a rebellious teenager activist vibe group. They showed me how to put an eyeliner. It's a rebellious eyeliner. And if I can say in brief what is their process, is that they worked with emergence. Working with emergence means working with chaos. There's chaos, and suddenly there's something that clicks. There's chaos, and then the network of care that created, and a beautiful thing emerges, right? So this is the very rebellious energy that they operated with. And the third group, if I briefly talk about their process, there was a majority of Palestinians in this group, 8 Palestinians, 4 Israelis, and a lot of the process of this group was actually Israelis and as a minority, trying to be accepted by the Palestinian majority in this space, also speaking to the fears and the challenges of the land. So before going to Sami, and he's going to tell how people returned, I'm just going to mention a few questionnaires. Again, this is a research as well. And for the ceremonies, we quantified some of the process. There were high ratings, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but just say there are high ratings of communitas, the sense of togetherness, of emotional synchrony, of visions and insight, emotional breakthroughs that are related to the conflict. Collective traumas come into people's experience, and pretty much half of the participants experience that their purge is related to the collective trauma. There were also insights for and visions for peace, and this kind of hopeful experience as if peace is felt is in the air. The revelation is not necessarily something you see in the vision. Sometimes the revelation is just being with a group of people that really transcended the way reality is. When we look at the whole program for the whole 10 days, people rate high on identity fusion. This is being fused with the group. They rate high on insights for peace. And with those insights, and now insight means you see a new way, with those insights comes also hope. The hope is very high, and when the hope is very high, we also see intention for action. People feel empowered, they want to act, they want to create, they want to bring this energy back to the land, and now the three groups return back to the land, and Sami will take it from here. I'll come back soon.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Lior Antoine. I just want to start by saying there was nothing imaginary about that pizza, Lior. It was very, very real. So thank you. I bring you greetings tonight from Bethlehem, where sadly I couldn't be with you in Horizons in this conference. And I really thank the organizers for hosting us, for inviting us, for having us share our experience. I also want to share that I come here with mixed feelings, coming here with a reality that we live as Palestinians, that we have been living in every day since October 7th. And many of you, and I hope many of you, know what's happening, are hearing the news, and are aware of the tremendous death and destruction that is taking place. It is also death destruction that happened from a very violent act that happened October 7th, that I truly believe it was a shock to all of us. A shock to Palestinians, a shock to Israelis alike. And that shock continues until this day. At the same time, I come with the deep call and the deep desire, like Lior, like Antoine, like many of you, to not just bring an end to the violence, not bring an end to the death and destruction, not bring an end to the hatred, but to manifest a real and deep understanding of what peace and justice and equality in this land that so many of us call holy looks like, and not just manifest it here, in the midst of what seems to be impossible for us to actually create that model that you can learn from, that the world can learn from, that if we can do it here in the midst of what seems to be impossible, everybody can do it no matter where they are in the world. For me, I am a Palestinian activist. I am a Palestinian who is committed to the liberation of the Palestinian people, to justice for the Palestinian people, and also in my activism committed for the Jewish community, for the Israeli community, for all of us to live in peace in this land. This has been the calling that I started when I was 12 years old, 40 years ago, and that continues until this day. In my activism, I have participated in and have done many, many things. I have explored, experimented with every theory and terminology and tool of peacemaking that you could think about. And I have to truly admit that one of the greatest turning points in my life, and I would say for the many people who participated in this project, was the participation in peacemaking and justice making through the healing work that is brought by medicine, plant medicine. For me, about 15 years ago, and Antoine has been also part of this journey, we began to realize that without addressing collective trauma, there can never be peace in this land. without looking to the past and healing the past and understanding how the past motivates us in the decisions that we make in the present for the future, there can never be peace in this land. And that's where we embarked. Antoine and I worked for Holy Land Trust on this work of healing, and not just healing ourselves as Palestinians, but deeply understanding that in our healing, we have to heal both the oppressor and the oppressed from the oppression, even though we both experience different oppressions, that we both are motivated by oppressions in what we do. And that embarked us on the journey that Antoine and Lior shared so beautifully about. And for me, I was asked to share about what has happened since then. As Lior said, the experience in Spain was an amazing experience. For me, it allowed us as Palestinians and Israelis through that deep process and that healing journey and that visioning journey to truly experience what peace manifests look like. That it wasn't just a theory, it wasn't just an idea, we lived. In Spain, we actually lived that sense of community, that sense of oneness, that sense of celebrating the diversity of who we are, that deep sense of being, showing empathy and care for each other in such space. And that is the energy that the participants left Spain and came back on. The challenge that we faced was actually in not understanding how amazing the work in Spain was going to be. As all of you know, this is a research, this is an exploration. And we had ideas, we had theories, we had certain tools that we brought, but the level of success, I think, was greater than any of us expected. And it was very challenging for many, many of the participants to come back and be faced with the reality of the conflict, the reality of the occupation, the reality of hatred and fear that existed in this land that was never gone. Also the reality of returning to their families, returning to their homes after also experiencing personal healing, as well as healing in their collective identity. But it was beautiful also to see that even in their return, the participants created community, created relationships, supported each other. Even when Armel, myself, Lior were also very exhausted by that experience in the integration work, people stood and filled the gaps for each other. They cared for each other, they served each other in a very organic and natural way. They were there for each other. And that was amazing and beautiful. And I want to share that for me, the experience since then has been truly amazing. I am dealing with people who are healed, who are really understanding the effects of the collective trauma of the past on how it shaped them, not just in how they viewed their own identity, but how they viewed the other, which is viewed also with mistrust and not respecting and even hatred towards them. We continued in our work and many ideas were emerged from the group. We had several integration sessions for the groups here. One thing we definitely learned, and as all of you know very well who are involved in medicine work, that you can never really have enough integration. And this is something that we promise that we will continue to deepen our learning. And how do we create safe havens and containers for people who participate in such programs in the future? Moving into this notion of sacred activism, bringing spirituality and activism together was a key component of the results that came out of the work that we did in Spain. There was a movement at some point to also bring it on a very grounded way in trying to save a wadi, a river that moves from Jerusalem to Jericho, Wadi al-Qilt, where settlements around it that were being built and the settlements that were depositing sewer water in the river. How do we save such a sacred river and such a sacred space? There was many initiatives that were created by the group, and there were many meetings that were held after. But I want to jump to more of the modern situation that we are in. October 7th came and October 7th hit. And as I said, it hit all of us in a very shocking way. On a personal level, I had family in Gaza, and my first reaction was to call one of my cousins and tell them, get out from Gaza as soon as possible. This is not going to be good. The machine of revenge and retaliation and hatred that was immediately created and manifested on that same day was beyond even comprehension for many of us. Of course, they were not able to leave, and I'm very thankful that about a month and a half ago, we were able to take my family out from Gaza to Cairo in the sadness that death and destruction continues until this day. What I want to share is that I have been involved with many, many peace organizations and a lot of peace networks and peace work, as Lior said, for decades. What happened after October 7th is that there was a movement where many people who have been involved in peace work moved very, very quickly into their polarized position. They became more of the defending of their position against the other, blaming the other and justifying the violence towards the other. And these are people who had been engaged in peace work also for decades. And I think the big missing for them is that they never engaged in the work that we offered, the deep healing work that needs to happen. Because immediately what we saw after October 7th was a very intentional attempt to reignite the historic wounds and the historic traumas of the past by certain leaders that insisted that what is happening today is a continuation of the hatred that has been going on towards us for decades until that point. Comparing October 7th to the Holocaust, comparing October 7th to 9/11, comparing October 7th to Pearl Harbor, making all of these connections that are not just meant to compare, but are meant to ignite deep fear and trauma in individuals. And I think this is where many peace activists fell into these traps. And the same on the Palestinian side. This is the existential fear, the existential threat. If we don't resist, we don't exist. And the resistance came through for many in using arms and violence and justifying the use of violence towards the other. In honesty, I can say that the only group of people that I felt was able to really engage in an authentic, truthful, and healed conversation are people who had experienced the work that we did in the collective in Spain. And I'm not saying all of them. There are many people who also came back exhausted. There are many people who also decided they don't want to even stay in this land, that they can't even belong here anymore, and they left the land. There was also many people who did experience personal fear, as they personally experienced a lot of violence as well. But to have a core commitment by all of them at some point to say we understand what is happening and we understand how we are being pulled into a polarized position, and we refuse to do that. And this for me has been a great, great success in the midst of the tragedy that we are living in. One of the great outcomes, and I will end with this, is that recently we had a gathering in the land with medicine, and the participants, including Lior that was with us here, we went into a very deep process of looking at what can we do in the midst of what seems to be impossible, not just complex, but truly impossible. And one of the key decisions that was made is this intentionality that we as Palestinians need to work much more and deeper within our own community, and Israelis need to work much deeper and more within their own communities to create circles for healing within our own societies, within our own nations, as to what is our identity. Who are we? Are we an identity that is connected to fear and trauma, or are we an identity that is liberated from within ourselves and can manifest peace with the other? And then for me, I think this is an amazing step. It's a very powerful step, because the inner work that needs to happen within each community is very much needed at this time. And from that, at some point, we see how to bring that work together. And I just want to proudly report to you that Indios, our friend from Brazil, was here last week, and we held an amazing session only for Palestinians participants. We had 14 participants, 9 of them drank for the first time. So you could imagine all of the fear that was leading up to that ceremony and everything that happened in that ceremony. And it was about their personal healing journey. And for me, it almost brings me to tears just to remember that experience of seeing Palestinians engage in this deep healing work. And a week after, I'm getting messages, deep gratitude, thankfulness, transformations that are happening in their life, healing that they are manifesting. We had an elderly Palestinian conservative Muslim woman, and I mean conservative, she wouldn't even shake the hands of men, participate with her 2 sons in this ceremony, drinking together. So the possibilities can become endless in such a situation. It's very important to end by saying our work is not easy. Our work is not just to normalize a certain reality or to create an alternative reality. We are digging deep into the issues that many people have ignored, the elephants in the room. And this work needs a lot of support and a lot of encouragement by you who are listening to us and watching us today. And I thank you truly for inviting us and allowing us to share our experience and our stories with you. Thank you.
He doesn't see this. He doesn't see it. سامي انت مش شايف. احنا اللي شايفين. احنا اللي شايفين انت مش شايف.
I can't see anything. I just see the your end and I'm smiling.
كل واقف.
I'll just share, we're going to do Q&A soon. I'm just going to share a bit of future direction and just say thanks for other people involved. Future direction is opening a nonprofit now called Ripples, with this attention for the ripples, right? With much more attention for how to hold the return, how to hold the community together, how to ripple the experience in creation and action and whatever wants to come with it, and resources allocated also to the ripples that come out from such experiences. Ripples also means Reconciliation Initiative for Psychedelic Peace Building and Liberation Encounters. I won't dive deep into this. Also, the energy is quite good right now, and I don't want to give more information. I just want to say thanks to Armel and Indios, more facilitators that are not here, for Ilham. It's an Israeli-Palestinian nonprofit that hosted the project, and we continue to work with them. With Cielo de la Vera, Hermanusis, that own Cielo de la Vera, Esteban, Claudio, Marcela, that hosted us, to Ashaninka tribe, that Indios was inspired to them just before coming to Spain, to funding of the project, to MAPS, who funded, and Moshe Tov Krebs, who funded the project. We worked together, to Kristen Angermeyer, to Jeremy Koller for future donation for Ripples, to Rick Dublin and Robin Cara-Terrace for their mentorship, for their participants who were brilliant in all of this, and we got very connected and learned a lot from them. And for Kevin, where's Kevin? Yeah, Kevin, thank you for hosting. You're the best host ever. Feel very welcomed here.
Okay. I'm gonna get the third now. I'm gonna get the third. تعال. بوت تكخل خد. بدنا نكخل.
Is Sami still there?
No.
Yeah. Good, Sami. We're in a Q&A now. We can also end with this, if we want. Quite good, maybe not to need to. Oh, here we are. Oh.
Sami? It's past my bedtime.
Nice to meet you. Good to know that there is always a Brazilian shaman out there. Okay, so it's time for questions and answers. Can we have the code, or do folks know how to post questions and answers in the app? There is, yeah, you can scan that, and we have the system. So welcome to point your phones and make your questions, and I'm going to be reading them here. Okay. What do you imagine is the scale of the work you did that you need to achieve to end the systemic oppression in Palestine? Just that, please.
Yeah. I can say what I
Few
imagine.
minutes, please.
What's that? It depends on the money. I think it's, I imagine the scaling, I can imagine how the scaling up happens, right? I can imagine what does it mean to have an energy of the movement, a movement, right? So it's not just about individuals that go through a process, but how those individuals inspire and attract others to whatever they're going through, whatever process they're going through. I can imagine, you know, many groups happening, but a group of, like, let's say 2,000 people, if the question is about number, I think can be quite inspirational in how it attracts people. It can be a network of care that's already created and supporting each other and the people in their creation, that allows people to step out of the whatever oppressive system they're in and create from a new place that is of togetherness and kind of out of the state of separation. But I don't know, really.
I mean, in a way, there was also an understanding from the beginning that this is not for everyone. Not everyone is going to drink ayahuasca. We know that is reality. And that was a big part of also a question that we held of what can we learn from the depth of the process of healing that happens in those spaces, and maybe bring it outside, maybe turn it into policies, maybe turn it into whatever is needed to fix the outside. Because again, yeah, unfortunately, not everyone's going to drink an ayahuasca. And we cannot put in the water for people. Yeah.
Sami, do you have any words of wisdom up there in the big screen?
Yeah, I think I want to say our aim is not quantity, but quality. And I think we agree that our goal is to create activists. We didn't come to create peace with each other. That came, of course, part of it. But I think our aim is to create trusted activists that have influence in their communities, that ripple into their communities and influence others. I think one of the things we are facing now, which is an opportunity, is the deep mistrust that both Palestinians and Israelis have in their leadership. They have both failed us. This is something that I think needs to be acknowledged. And at some point, there will be a desire to look for new leadership, emerging leadership. And this is where the opportunity comes in, because if we don't fill that gap, it will be filled by those who have even more maybe radical or extreme agendas. And so for us, I think our aim is to create leaders and activists who have influence, who have trust, who can sit with each other, who can address the most difficult issues and bring solutions to our communities.
Can you talk about, like, just more freely, maybe what not goes to the peer review part? Like, what are the main challenges of doing this work that you don't publish in your articles?
I kind of want to publish them all, right? All the challenges. Some of them are the return, right? What we mentioned, it's not easy to return sometimes from the paradoxes of connection, right? You connect so strongly, but you return to a reality that separates. You liberate, but return to a reality that oppresses. That can be destabilizing to people, like really challenging for individuals, right? Not just like tiny challenging, like really challenging for some individuals. And I think with many psychedelic experiences, there is this tension of integration, but here we tapped into bringing another layer of hope, another layer of maybe even liberated from something, that it also brings with it another layer of challenges of integration. Because if you bring the hope really high, you can play also with the potentialities of despair, right? When the hope is not met in reality. So the challenges are how to integrate, how to create spaces that also hold the community together and hold the creation together, and actually make space for the hope to bring itself into life. Maybe another challenge that I won't mention in papers, I don't know, is the relation to power and power dynamics. In these spaces, there's always a challenge that these healing modalities are also very powerful, and they create sometimes challenges with people want proximity to power, people try to pull different directions that are not just necessarily harmonious, but also related to wanting to be close to power, being close to facilitators, trying to now work, if we have funding, to maybe get close to this funding and maybe have other incentives. So these might be challenges that we face if we grow in this work.
And can you talk more about the idea of what is sacred activism?
One of the key aspects of the work that we did, I think, was motivated by what happened in Standing Rock. And that has been an inspiration in seeing indigenous communities come together to resist injustice, to resist oppression, to resist the destruction of their sacred land and water sources, and at the same time coming together and doing it by combining activism and sacredness, by combining spirituality and prayer with activism itself. Growing up in an activist community, I can say that, and I'll share this from my own personal journey, I am a person who is committed to nonviolence. My whole life is committed to nonviolence. I've never touched a gun. I don't think I will ever touch a gun. I will definitely never shoot a gun in my life. But I began to understand at a certain point that my nonviolence activism was also coming from a heart of deep hatred and fear and resentment towards the other. And that's not good. That doesn't create peace. And so for me, my personal journey was, how do I also engage in my activism and standing for justice and rights of Palestinians, but also coming from a heart of love and compassion and deep understanding of my enemy and the healing that needs to happen in my enemy. Those who in Standing Rock were not yelling, water is ours. They were saying, Mini Wachuni, water is life, water is for everybody. And this is what we believe. Sacred activism also means this land is not for this tribe or that tribe. There is no exclusive claim to this land. We are all here. And in activism, we come together. In sacredness and prayer, we come together. So it's combining both spirituality and direct action. This is what sacred activism is for me.
How can people learn more about this work, and how can they contribute? And this is from me. Are you trying to look for funding, and how can people support the work you're doing?
Yeah, for Ripples, we just started fundraising a few days ago. You can come to me, contact me. We're very much opening it right now for fundraising, for a plan of like few years and really building something big, not just another pilot project, but more like creating more groups that support each other and with a continuation. So you can email me, you can come to me, I can send you different documents. Yeah, thanks for that question.
People are making a lot of questions about how to bring similar work here to America, or what advice do you have for people that would like to do something like this here? Bunch of questions like that.
Right. Yeah, so with the nonprofit, we do plan to bring it to other contexts after we kind of practice on our own context. And, but I think if people want to bring it here, yeah, we're happy to support any process from our knowledge that we gained until now, support any process of people that have been inspired for that and trying to do something similar in different contexts. It always needs to be tailored to the localities and the complexities of every locality, but we're happy to enter conversation with anybody who seek to use similar approach and see how we can be of support. Yeah. Sami is brilliant in that.
And can you talk a little bit about like the cultural aspects of trying to do a ceremony that you have people from different cultures and with different traditions, and what kinds of songs or, you know, the format? Did you like create a special ritual for that, and does that feel authentic, and how do you tailor to cultural sensitivities, but at the same time you don't want to like invent a ritual because, you know, it's not your place as a researcher? Can you talk a little bit about this backstage?
Yeah, I can say that pretty much the work of Indius is quite participatory. So he himself is a non-indigenous person from the Amazon, but he's been traveling through different communities and working also in the past with Santo Daime, but also with lots of other tribes in the area. And he himself is quite already diverse, and the type of ritual he does is very much allowing people to bring their own backgrounds and prayers, music, rituals into the space and to create it together. So that approach really much helped us to also bring our own music and background and culture, and even religions if they need to be expressed in the space, and especially the music. So each group had a few musicians coming into it, and also many people who are not musicians but enjoy singing once in a while or sharing something with a group. So the Israeli and Palestinian musicians are the ones who really held a lot of the music and the kind of musical exchange in that night, and the space allowed it in a way. Yeah.
Antoine, you are very quiet there. Tell us a secret thought about your trip to America and being here. How are you feeling? What are your dreams?
It just connects to also a question that was asked before, like, can this be done somewhere else? And I connected to my trip to America. Yeah, it's very concerning actually being in the US. And
scary.
Sorry?
Scary?
Scary, concerning to see, witness the continuous polarization, the continuous divide, marginalization, neglect. And it's important that those conversations happen nowadays. It's important for me actually to stress that, yeah, systematic injustice does have a space to be dealt with and does have a priority. As much as I appreciate encountering all the work that actually helped me personally in my life on the personal healing level, as much as I also would like that this community takes forward more this work to the systematic. I do happen to work with teenagers from almost all across the globe, including Americans. And I would be ringing the bell to say, deal with the systematic issues that you have here. It's enough what we have already globally. Do the work faster. We need your support similarly. So that's what I would say.
There's also a question about the risks, like sometimes to use substances like ayahuasca or other psychedelics and then kind of end up having an effect of strengthening polarization and right-wing psychedelia. Can you talk about this danger of perhaps helping polarization instead of bridging and healing?
Yeah, I mean, our group was a very diverse group, but in groups that maybe are more homogeneous, there's no, or they are not really looking at also these larger questions, there might be possibilities in which psychedelics are enforcing certain ideologies. I've been studying also groups of settlers taking ayahuasca together to inquire into that question, and a student that I was supervising interviewed groups of settlers. I was expecting this thing that it is kind of like intensifies it, intensifies let's say the connection to land is something quite national, and can be also serving certain ideologies. But I can say that it didn't seem like they were still right-wing. It did not challenge the settler ideology to drink ayahuasca in that space because the group was quite homogeneous, but I'm not sure that it really intensified it. I was suspecting that it will, but I'm not sure that really intensifies it. It seemed that there was like the ceremony that they did together and the reality, and it seemed to be quite separated, especially when it was mostly on a personal level, those ceremonies of settlers. But I don't really know the answer. There are definitely some ideas around how psychedelics can intensify ideologies, and that's a possibility. And some examples like this in history, but I don't really know. Yeah.
To some extent, it's not like, it shouldn't be surprising if you have a group of, let's say, people who align with one ideology, that they would drink and not change their mind. It's not different than dialoguing with someone that you agree with. If you're dialoguing with someone you agree with, no step closer is going to be taken by any side. So setting, and intention are things that are inherited, at least from the space of dialogue, thousands of years of culture that we know as humanity, and also from the space of medicine. And if the set and the setting do not create a space where people can be moving between the comfort zone and the stretch zone, including with medicine, then yeah, let's set our expectations. Yeah, it might be a nice journey, it might trip healing, but will it move people? Not necessarily.
I was talking to Juliana back in the moderator's room that I visited a center in Peru last July that is receiving a lot of veterans, like they're kind of becoming experts on treating veterans with PTSD and ayahuasca, and things like a facilitator getting like beaten up, or one person that tried to commit suicide. All kinds of things were happening, very intense. And then the owner of the center told me that they figured a good way to move forward was to have a woman facilitator present, that somehow the man kept it really much more together when there was a woman present. And so I'm just saying, I didn't create this. He told me, and so. Do you have any women in your team, and what is the role of women? Is there some powerful feminine figures that we can learn from together with you guys?
Maybe you can share on the names.
Yeah, Armel, one of the facilitators, and another Palestinian woman that was in the team, but she prefers not to identify. Natalie, that was important, Natalie Ginsberg. But you're right, we are 3 men here. And there are few actually participants from the group Spain's women that feels like they're moving into facilitation space, and they're quite powerful in the way they hold space. And I do think it was a bit, even that I have to say, even that there were women in the group, it did feel like there was not enough women leadership in the group, and we do hope for that. I've been to spaces in which women hold the space, and it's indeed feels much more easy and trusting what's happened, and more also right and equal. It feels right, and we do hope to see that also emerging. And few Palestinian women that came from the groups in Spain are now also learning how to facilitate space. I don't know, Sami, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I just want to share that in the last ceremony that we did here with the Palestinians, it was me and 2 Palestinian women who held the space, and both of them were part of the Spain project, and they were beyond amazing in how they held the space, how they held the tension, how they held those who went through deep processes. So this is happening, and it's emerging. And then I want to say that specifically, I think with this particular medicine, that the feminine, strong energy emerges. I think you remember one time when the wildness of the feminine came out in one of the ceremonies, and we looked at one corner, and there was like 2 men, a Palestinian and Israeli man, like kind of cuddling with each other, looking into the big celebration and the dancing and the movement and the drumming of the women. And for me, that's, beyond facilitation, it's women taking over the space that is powerful and healing as well. So yes.
Yeah, I think we can just take a moment to acknowledge like some women leaders, also Natalie Ginsberg and Karen, I don't know how to say,
Chapati.
yeah, that. Can we give it for them? Well, we've come to an end. I want to thank you so much. You know, for me, I'm an anthropologist that I've dedicated main part of my career to studying ayahuasca. Spent 10 years completely fanatical, and then 10 years semi-fanatical, and the last 7 years kind of more balanced. Ayahuasca is, you know, a vine like rope to the invisible world, to the world of ancestors. So I want to acknowledge, you know, ayahuasca has to do with death and with this invisible world, with the world of the spirits and ancestral. And death is something so strong. It's uniting all of us, and there is something very powerful about using ayahuasca to talk about war and death and life. And for a lot of groups, some groups consider taking ayahuasca kind of small death, where you would like learn how to go to the world that exists beyond when you die. So talking about being alive and the privilege of being here and honoring life and acknowledging death at the same time and talking about conflict, you know, I'm biased, but I think it's kind of as beautiful as it gets. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.